Testing. Great. Everybody hear that real well? All right, we're trying the wireless for the first time, so we'll see how it works. I'd like to welcome everybody. We're live streaming this, but we have quite a number of people here in attendance. We have our board of directors on this side, and they have their respective name tags. I'd like you to go along and raise your hand and wave to everybody. We have Ruth, our board chair. We have David Brandenburg, Jim Abrahamson, Steve McKee, Mary Sinkus, Jerry Hover, Tia Bidwell, Jerry Barron Jr., and David Welchel was unable to attend today. On this side, we have our management team. We have Joan Globzinski, we have Rick Eccles, Tommy Lee, Jack Brooks, Carmen Dissing, Kim Carlson, Daryl Mondoon, Keith Eames, Dwayne Mitchell, Charlie Holt, Doug McCash, and Tammy Lloyd. So we have our management team here, and I'm Tom Judson. So we're going to go through the budget, the proposed budget for 2020. It's a little bit of a lengthy presentation, probably a caffeine-required meeting, but we're going to go through it, and at the very end, we'll have a Q&A session. We are live streaming that, so if you're at home, you can watch this. If you're at home, first of all, there's a tremendous amount of information. If you could hold your questions to the end, I would appreciate it. But if you are at home and you want to print out, you have access already. We posted it at about 5 o'clock. The handout that was given to everybody that's in attendance right now, you can get that online, and you can actually get all 130 slides. If you see on the right-hand corner, you'll see member resources. You click there first, then you click on the bottom where it says reports, and that'll lead you to this page, and you'll go down and you'll see under budgets, the one on the screen says 2019 because we had not yet posted today's presentation prior to taking a snapshot of this. So that's how you can take a look at it, and when you get home and if you missed any of the slides or you want to relive this wonderful experience, you can go through it again. So the budget approval. So this is the tentative budget. The board will meet on the 21st of this month, and presumably they'll vote regarding the budget. So it's still a work in progress. The board as a whole is in favor of this, not every board member. We have some divergent opinions. When you have 9 board members, you have a lively activity, lively discussion, and so forth. But as a whole, the board is supportive of this budget. Additional changes could be made. If you want to attend the November 21st meeting at the Country Club at 6 p.m. is when it's going to be brought up for a vote. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I want to make sure everybody knows what they're looking at. So here's the financials. You're going to see 4 columns. You're going to see the 2018 actuals, so that's January through December of 18. Those are the actuals. You're going to see the trailing 12, okay? And that is October of 18 all the way through September of 19. So those are the most current actuals, okay? So it gives you, if you want to compare to 18 or you want to compare to the most current, have at it, okay? Now, the board asked the management team to prepare 2 budgets because of the timing of the assessment vote. We won't know the outcome until the 19th, and then the board votes on it on the 21st. So you're actually going to see 2 budgets, and you're going to see a pass budget and a fail budget, and they're going to be right next to each other. So for each of these, and I'm going to get into the numbers in just a minute. For right now, I'm just kind of giving you the background of what you're looking at. But you'll see the first column is 2018 actuals. The second column is the trailing 12. And then you have the pass, and then you have the fail. Okay? That way you can compare and contrast and take a look at what we've put together. Also, for each of these, we have the income statement, the cost of sales, expenses, and EBITDA. So the income is revenue, green fees, assessments, revenue from the restaurants, and so forth. You also have cost of sales. When you sell food, it costs you to sell the food. When you sell merchandise, it costs you. And then expenses are labor and supplies and uniforms and fertilizer for the golf course, those types of things. And the EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and allocations. A little bit different from the traditional EBITDA. A usually stands for amortization. This stands for allocations, okay? And this is what we really judge our department heads by. And so here are those 4 rows, okay? And how you can look at it. So we're going to get into these numbers in just a minute. I just want to make sure everybody's following along on how to read the financials the right way. Because unfortunately, this is a very financially intensive meeting. Okay, so I want to give you a little perspective because we have a number of things that are modifying or changing, have a great impact upon the 2018 numbers. So first of all, you have $1.6 million in Trafalgar Fire expense in 2018. So when you're looking at the expenses for 18, you got to keep that in mind. Why is that number so high? Second of all, in the trailing 12, you have 3.9 because that includes the latter portion of 18 and then all of 19 when we were fighting the fire. It also includes a one-time sale of the cell tower leases of $1.1 million, and you have a one-time sale of ARCMO that occurred earlier this year. The net gain was $350,000. We sold it for the appraised value of $1,475,000, but we had a closing cost and we had book value. So we've only recognized $350,000 worth of revenue. So keep those in mind when you're doing your comparison because those are such significant deltas. They impact the financials so much that if I didn't mention it, you might go, well, why is this different? All right, a little bit more. The trailing 12 includes earlier this year when we found out in January, February timeframe, when we found out about the Trafalgar fire, we went through the capital and operating budget and we cut out $1 million out of that budget because we knew we were going to have to preserve cash. So if you look at 18 and compare it to the trailing 12, in many cases, trailing 12 is going to be less in expenses and so forth because we had to make such big cutbacks. In many cases, 2018 may be a better comparison than the trailing 12. But we give them both to you, and you can be the judge. Okay, the past budget. Now, here's one thing that I wanted to make sure everybody is aware of. In the past budget, it is not an immediate cure-all. The past budget goes through, and all of a sudden our financial problems are in the past. That is not the case. It's going to be a multi-year process. Okay? We had a $4 million bill that got dropped on our laps. It's going to take time to get over it. Okay? So the increase will not solve all problems in a single year. The past budget is lean. It'll take time. Okay, now, felt it was very important that we compare everything to the 2020 plan because people are going to go, okay, you told us, Tom, it's increasing by $11 and $6 is going here and $2 is going here. We want to see it on the budget, okay? So in here, you'll see. So the $6, and I'm quoting straight from the 2020 plan brochure, eliminating or reducing current fees, okay? So revenue will decrease in the following departments: pro shop, recreation, lakes, parks, tennis, okay? Because we're offsetting those. We're lowering those fees. We're increasing the assessments. So the money is being transferred from one department to another. It's $1 million wash. No gain, no loss. You've lowered green fees and you've replaced them with assessments, okay? So it's $1 million wash. And I'm going to notate this in 3 different departments where you're going to see revenue in the past budget. In golf, you're going to notice that revenue is going to drop, okay? But assessments are going to go up, okay? $2 will go for the Trafalgar fire, okay? $2 equals $335,000. It's a little under 14,000 improved properties that are in good standing. 14,000 times 2 times 12 gets you $335,000. So $335,000 will be spent towards legal fees, okay? And we're probably going to be spending that much or more for the next 3 to 5 years. but at least for 2020, we think $335,000 is a good number. Additionally, so almost like we're putting $4 towards this, we're going to put $335,000 towards paying down the water loan. And I'm going to talk about the water loan in a few minutes. Okay, so there's your $2. Then we had $2 is going to go towards operational costs and capital improvement projects. Well, our past budget has $303,500 in capital projects and $60,000 in non-capital projects. That exceeds the $335,000. Okay? And then $1 will go towards building our reserves. $1 times 14,000 lots times 12 months out of the year, that gives you $168,000. Not a great start, 168,000 ducks, but it's going to take time to build that, okay? So that's where all the money goes. And then $2 for the unimproved. It was approximately 21,000 unimproved lots. So $2 times 21,000 times 12 months out of the year, that gives you $504,000, okay? So 32 of it is going to go towards reserves. So we're going to actually put 200,000, we're going to look on the very bottom one, we're going to put 200,000 towards reserves. The rest was allocated across all the departments to cover increasing costs. Failed budget. Okay, so let's go back to the past budget. So if you look at the front sheet of the 2020 brochure and how it broke down, $6, $2, $2, you can go home, you can print this off, and it demonstrates that we're showing where this money is going and how it's being allocated in the budget. Okay, the failed budget. Failed budget is a very different story. Okay, it is extremely tight, and in my opinion, it is unsustainable. And what I've called it is the road back to 2015 when our amenities were in poor shape, okay, and things were falling apart, and that's not a good thing. And within 2 to 3 years, we're going to have to, if not sooner, we're going to have to look at closing amenities because it's just not realistic to run this. In the presentations that I did earlier this year, I talked about the math no longer works, and just that's the case. The math does not work. The last time we had an increase was 2001. We're now heading into 2020, and it just doesn't work. Okay, the loan. Well, this isn't working. The loan at the end of this year, we anticipate will be $2.3 million. It's higher right now because in October, November, we're cash poor, and I'm going to cover that in just a little bit. But December and January, we're cash rich. Okay, but we anticipate at the end of this year, we will be at $2.3 million. So our plan is to pay this off over a 7-year period, and we're looking at a payoff of $335,000 in principal, just in principal. In the operating budget, we have interest expense already covered. So just in principal. So it's going to take us about 7 years. Okay? It's not going to, like I said before, passing the assessment increase does not solve our problems immediately. It will take time. The failed budget, well, it gets worse. It's a lot worse. We're going to only be able to put about $150,000 towards the water loan, so you're looking at a 10-year payoff on a $2.3 million debt. All right, the cyclical nature of cash flow. So we don't receive cash in a constant stream throughout the year. It actually goes up and down based upon the seasonality. Imagine, we're going to talk about Daryl in our golf department. There's not a lot of people playing golf during the wintertime, but there's a whole bunch playing during the summertime. So his department's going to bring in more revenue during the summer and less during the winter. It's somewhat similar in other departments also. So we have cash poor times of year, October, November, but we also have cash rich times of year that are December and January. So during cash poor times, we're going to have to use that money. And of course, this battery wants to come out. Hopefully that's not important. And for the past budget, the 2020 year-end balance, we're forecasting to drop from $2.3 million down to under $2 million because we're going to have that payment of $335,000. But what I wanted to make sure everybody is aware, if you were to look at our balance on the loan balance, and if you go onto our financials, you can see where we've created a document. It's called the one-pager. It's very simple. For those people that like a lot of numbers, it's probably not for you. But if you want just a little bit of information, you can go on there and you can see how much we owe the water department. So you could go on there in January and February and say, wow, they're actually doing pretty good. They've paid off a lot of the loan. But then if you revisited that same document in October or November, and you go, well, it's now gone the other direction, because we've gone from a cash-rich time of year to a cash-poor time of year. So what we're doing is we're basing it upon the year-end number, the 2.3. Capital constraints. So in the POA and HOA industry, what is normally what the common standard business practice is to spend 100% of depreciation. So your asset value does not decrease over time, okay? So you should spend approximately 100%. And our annual, just for the POA, not including water, is about $1.8 million. So here's the problem, is even with the past budget, we're looking at spending under 25% for 2 years in a row, okay? That's not necessarily a good thing, because over time, what ends up happening is you see a deterioration in your infrastructure. You're not putting enough back into the place, okay? You got to change the tires, you got to change the brakes, you got to change the oil, you got to all those things, and eventually you got to get a new car, okay? Not the best analogy, but it's something similar like that when you talk about buildings. For the failed budget, it's way worse, 5%. And we're looking at $49,000. So we have a annual budget about $28 million, and we're putting $49,000 towards capital projects. You can tell that the team is squeezing that budget as tight as they can, and that's not necessarily a good thing for the long haul. Okay, employee payroll. So first of all, state said, okay, minimum wage $10 now. It's going to be $1 more in 21, but right now it's going to be $10 January 1. Not all of our departments are going to be impacted. Some of them will, some of them won't. Golf, Daryl, he's being more impacted because he had a lot of outside services. So those guys are getting automatic raises no matter what. Okay? For the past budget, we've incorporated a 1.6% cost of living adjustment for our employees. For the fail, no increase at all, except we must do the $10 minimum wage, okay? That's not, there's no option, okay? Now the 1.6, that is the same as Social Security. That just came out a little bit ago. Here's my big concern, and all of our big concern, and you can talk to Keith. Keith struggled all year long to fill his spots. He had as many as 3 or 4 openings all year long. Hire one, lose one, hire one, lose one, because it's a tough job. It's not the highest paying job, okay? And there's a lot of competition. We are in one of the tightest job markets in the nation. On top of that, with the build out of the new Walmart headquarters, employment's going to get tough. It's going to be hard for us to fill our positions. Okay, upside potential. Now, if you went to any of my presentations, you will have heard me say that we are estimating in our budget 0 increase in our photo IDs, our golf memberships, our member rounds, and our golf registrations. Okay? So, for example, this year we sold 10,000 photo ID cards. If the assessment increase passes and we convert it over to the activity card, I'm going to guess that we're going to sell a lot more than 10,000. But anything over 10,000 is a guess. I use that word guess. Is it going to be 11,000? Is it going to be 12,000? Is it going to be 15,000? I don't know. I think it's a fantastic program. But we, in this budget, we went with 10,000 because that's how much we knew we sold this year. And the program is better. I feel pretty good it's not going to go down. It's only going to go up. But how much is it going to go up? It would be a total guess by me or one of the staff members. So we went flat. So we have a potential, an upside potential, and that's a good thing. So it means that we've budgeted conservatively on the revenue side, okay? You want to be conservative on revenue and on expenses, and I think we've done that. Okay, so that kind of gave you the setup of what we're looking at. Now we're going to go into each of the departments. So first I'm going to give you a brief. We're going to briefly go over POA without water. But I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we're going to get into that in more detail later on in the presentation. And here's why. I like to build from the bottom up, okay? Because if we just look at this number and go, well, why did income or cost of sales go up or down in a global sense over all, look at how many departments we got here. You're going to go, well, what caused that? Well, let's go into the detail. We're going to go into the detail in each of the departments, and then we'll be able to go to the answer. So I'm going to start here. We're only going to spend 1 minute on this, and then we're going to go into the detail on it. All right, so we're going to start with Daryl. Daryl, raise your hand, please. There we go. So Daryl is our Director of Golf Operations. If you're at home or you're in the audience, you see in the top left-hand corner it says page 5. That's what we're on. You can go to page 5. It's in the bottom of your handout. Okay, significant drivers. The past budget, approximately $482,000, is going to shift from golf revenue into assessments. Okay, it's going to shift from one department into the other. POA as a whole stays the same. Individual department changes. Okay, we're anticipating all 5 of the golf courses, all 5 of the 18-hole golf courses will be open all year long. Fingers crossed. It has not worked out so well the last couple of years. We're assuming that Birchdale 9 will reopen by making inexpensive fixes, no repairs to the bridges. Okay, other significant drivers. Want you to be aware, non-members bring in over $1 million in revenue each year, and that is just golf revenue. If you included food and beverage and merchandise, it's going to be higher than that, but it's easy to track the golf revenue, and you can see how significant the non-members bring in. And merchandise, doing a fantastic job. Leslie Terry is our merchandiser, do great, go into the pro shop, buy a shirt. They're doing fantastic. All right, proposed fee changes. So for the past budget, everything's in the 2020 brochure. You've already seen it. You already know. That's what's in there. Okay. And the 2020 brochure is also available on our website if you have forgotten it. The failed budget. Here's the challenge. We're at the top end. We had a golf study done last year, and it said our rates are at the top end. And here's what what has happened. Every single time we've gone back to the membership and raised rates, our rounds have bottomed. Okay? So we don't feel that even with a failed budget, we can go back and say, okay, we're going to raise golf fees. So we're projecting that all those fees will remain the same. All right, no capital projects. That's an easy slide. Okay, cutbacks. So on each of the departments, I'm going to give you a little bit of give you a sense of what we had to cut out of it. And I think that by the time you get to the last department, you're going to go, holy cow, they really pulled out a lot from their budget. And you'll start seeing those things. So if you've been to the Dogwood parking lot and you see how ratty it is and you can't find it in the lines and it needs to be recoded with asphalt, well, we wanted to, Daryl wanted to have that in his budget, but it's $130,000. And there's not a big ROI, return on investment, on a parking lot. But you got to maintain it. So there's 3 of the projects that we had to cut. All right. So here is just the revenue side of Daryl. So you'll see, once again, the first column is 2018 actuals, the trailing 12, which is the most current actuals. We have the past budget and the failed budget. So take a look at the golf row and take a look at the trailing 12 where we've made 3.8. Now compare that to the 3.9, which is from the 2018. That's almost all rain. 20 inches over normal right now? We're just getting hammered by rain. It's impacting our revenue. But look to the right, and you see the 2020 past budget. Look at how much it goes down. Boom. Because that revenue gets allocated over to assessments. It goes from one department to another department. But look at the failed budget. We're estimating that we're going to stay fairly constant because I would hope that we wouldn't have another rainy year like this. Okay. Then you go down to the gross profit. You'll see your cost of sales. And then here's your expenses. So there's quite a bit of data. So you can see our salaries, our supplies, fuel, credit cards, uniforms, everything. And that brings you down to the EBITDA line. So look on the bottom. Look at how the EBITDA for 2018 and the trailing 12 are pretty similar. That's because Daryl's doing everything he can to control his expenses. He knows his revenue is down because of the rain, so he's controlling his expenses as best as he can. But look at how the EBITDA drops with the passage because you're allocating that money to another area. And how it goes up, and it actually stays constant with the fail. We have seen a constant drop in the number of rounds played. It would be ridiculous for Daryl to anticipate an increase in usage of the golf courses with the fail budget. All right, we're on page 6. We're on golf maintenance. Keith, raise your hand, please. He's our he's director of golf course superintendents. Okay, a couple critical drivers. Keith has guaranteed me we're going to have 5 18-hole golf courses open all year long. No, I agree. It hasn't worked out so well so far. Focus on great playing conditions. You can guarantee me that, though. You're always doing that. The budget is tight. It includes no contingencies, and we've had a lot of floods lately, and they are not cheap. Areas that are not out of play, that are out of play, that have not been maintained in 2019, will not be maintained in 2020. So a lot of our customers, a lot of our property owners have noticed, hey, you're not mowing in these out-of-play areas. They used to be really well maintained. Well, we're cutting back everything we can because if we can preserve that labor, we have to do that. All right. 2 capital projects. Capital is anything over $10,000 that's of a permanent basis, okay? Earlier we talked about non-capital projects. Those are usually still big projects, but they cost you less than $10,000. So $22,000 for 2 Jacobson triplexes that we have to get, and that's pass and fail budget, so you know we have to get those. And then the sand storage bins at Kingsdale, pass and fail. But you'll see what the cutbacks, we had quite a number of cutbacks. The greens roller at Scottsdale is important. The root pruner, so we have a lot of trees that are immediately next to cart paths. You bring in a root pruner, it cuts it up so that we don't lose the cart path. So this is a good example of where you cut back now, you can pay more for it later because the roots pop up the cart path, mess them up, so forth. So while I want you to see that we've done everything we can to cut back our budgets, there is a cost to it. There is a payback, or it's not just cutting it out, but you have to recognize that it can impact you. All right, omissions. I did not want to miss this at all, okay? Because we have a couple glaring omissions. So we budgeted this time of year, but we don't have all the facts. We had major flooding at Scottsdale. We had major damage at the bridges at Scottsdale. The problem is we don't have all the answers yet, okay? It's going to take time. We're going to have to bring the engineers out. They've already been out a couple times. They've got to put together plans on how we're going to save these bridges in the long haul, okay? It's a glaring omission, but we can't put in a placeholder or anything because we don't know how much, okay? So for me to skip it would be a problem. So I'm including it in the presentation, but it's still a significant dollar amount. Now, a lot of people might go, or some people might go, well, why would you repair the bridges at Scottsdale, but you're not sure if you're going to repair the bridges at Birksdale? There's a reason. It's because we have a much better chance of saving those bridges on the long term at Scottsdale than any of the courses in the valley, because we know that the flooding in the valley is increasing in just intensity year after year as there's more urbanization upstream. Okay, the other thing, we have not allocated any funds for the repair or the replacement of the Birchdale Bridge, okay? It's too much of a financial burden for us to repair the Birchdale Bridge and the Scottsdale Bridges in the same year. It is not realistic, okay? If you'd asked me the same question a month ago before the floods, I would have probably given you a different answer. But not now. That changed everything, unfortunately. That's the reality. Now, Daryl and Keith have been working on an inexpensive, kind of a quick fix that we think may work. They don't have all the information. They have to get it to the golf committee. The golf committee is still working through it. So we're trying to get Birchdale reopened in a quick fix manner. But repairing the bridge at Birchdale, we can't even consider that for 2020. So once all the facts are in, at some point in 2020, we're going to have to make a decision to either repair, replace, or remove the bridge at Birchdale. Okay? And that's not going to be an easy decision for the golf committee and the board to make. All right, so here's the financials for you. You'll see that labor has been pretty good. So look how in 2018, compared to the trailing 12, Keith's done a really good job of conserving on labor. It's going to go up in the past budget because you have a couple different things. You have the 1.6% increase, plus you have a little impact from the $10 minimum wage. Not much, but see how it's relatively flat on the fail, okay? And you can go down and look at all the different ones and look at the EBITDA. All right, page 7. Tommy Lee, raise your hand, please. Okay. All right, so the profit and loss shows significant progress towards reaching break even. So we made a commitment to the community and to the board that we would, after the restaurants, the restaurants would break even after they've been open for 3 to 4 full years. Now, we've seen growth in our banquets. Also wanted to note, this is kind of just because people are here. The Lake Point, like we did earlier this year, will be closed for the first 6 weeks of the year. We do a lot of maintenance. We transfer that labor to BV Bar and Grill. Helps us save money because it's the slowest time of year. It's cold, it's dark, and a lot of people don't want to come out at that time of year. We open up at Valentine's Day, and we do great. Okay, both the pass and the fail budgets show an annual loss of less than $200,000. Now, I was at a conference with other Cooper communities or former Cooper communities. One was Hot Springs, one was Tellico. What's interesting, I found out, is their annual F&B losses, very different operations at both of the places, are in excess of $400,000. So while we're young, we're still doing better than a decent comparison. Only capital project for this department is $16,000 for repainting of the back. It gets the most sun all the time, gets the wind, it's by the water. It just needs to be repainted. And that's not going to be a one-time thing. We're going to probably have to do this every 3 years to maintain it because it gets beat up because of its location. This is a very tight budget. They're doing everything they can to exceed the commitments that they've made to the community. So you'll see here's the revenue. You'll see that it's steadily going up. You'll see that in 18 we did 1.6, 1.7. We're knocking on the door of $2 million in the trailing 12, and both for the pass and the fail, we're looking at 2.1. So you're seeing a steady increase in revenue because we're doing a great job. Let's look at the bottom line. Everyone wants to go straight to the bottom line. So let's look at the EBITDA loss. Negative 562, so we were not doing as well as the other two communities. The trailing 12, pretty good improvement. And then for the pass and the fail, you're seeing that we're doing really good. Now, some people might go, well, why don't we get the assessment passed but still take the fail budget? Because the fail budget is so extremely tight, you just can't maintain the facilities the way they are. You can't skip a break, fixing your brakes and so forth. It's maybe not the best analogy, but But you can still see, if you look at those three numbers on the EBITDA line, you can see constant improvement, which is what we want to see from Tommy. Correct? There we go. All right, we're on page 8, and this is Tommy again. He takes care of the buildings, the clubhouses for us. So people are going to go, clubhouses? So this department accounts for costs to operate our clubhouses, such as utilities, taxes, insurance. It doesn't have any employees. But we have many clubhouses that house multiple departments. Think of Metfield. You have the pro shop, okay, and you have the workout facilities, and you have member services all in one building, okay? So how do you start allocating those expenses? You don't. You put it into this department, okay? But you start allocating the expenses. What are you going to do it by head count, employee head count, by revenue, by square footage? Put it in this department. No capital projects. Here's the P&L. You'll see that we're cutting back. Now look in 18 and the trailing 12, well, mainly 18, you have a lot of stuff when we opened up some buildings, like when we did the renovation work at the Country Club and the Lake Point, you had items that we could not capitalize. It had to be an expense item, and so you'll see some of those in there. That's part of the reason why the EBITDA line is higher in 18 compared to the trailing 12, and you see the trailing 12 in the past are very similar. All right, we're on page 9. Mike Taggart is on vacation today. I hope he's enjoying himself. So this is the MAC department, or maintenance and construction. All right, so income is down is because earlier this year we sold the cell tower leases for $1.1 million. We'll still have some revenue because it didn't cover every cell tower that we have, but it covered most of them. And it also includes a lot of stump dump work. So MAC does a tremendous amount of work for us on our buildings, our landscaping. So not our golf course, I shouldn't have said that, but our landscaping, so forth. They do a lot of different things, vehicle maintenance. They support the water department with the work on roads when we have to dig up roads to get to water pipes under roads and so forth. So they do this is a very large department. Okay, so they have 2 projects, replacement of 2 out front rotary mowers. That's for their landscape division. And another rotary. Well, one is the past budget. We need 2. Under the failed budget, we're getting 1. Cutbacks. Large track hoe. Those are big, expensive items. They last for many, many years. We had to cut those out. Okay. We also had to cut out the replacement of some vehicles. And that's kind of one of those pay me now, pay me later. It may save us $37,000, but that vehicle ends up going into the shop because we run our vehicles till they are into the ground. So it's not uncommon for us to be cycling out our vehicles when they hit like 200,000 miles, which is when they start really running and the tires start falling off. Also, not included in here. So when we sold ArcMo, we have a barn out there. Okay? It's where we store all of our rarely used equipment, such as a golf course aerifier. We're going to aerify the greens 3 or 4 times a year. Other than that, that piece of equipment sits idle. So we have it in a barn, we have it protected and so forth. Why do we want to make sure it's protected well? Because that piece of equipment can last you 20 years. So you take the good care of it, it's going to last you 20 years. Well, when we sold ArcMo, we no longer own that land. We have a lease on that barn. We were able to negotiate an extension. We're going to have to replace it in 21. Okay? So early 21, we got to get a new barn. We already have a new location located. Good English. But just want you to be aware, that's a cutback that's, it's helping us this year, but it doesn't help us next year. Okay? All right, and there it is. So there's the MAC division. You'll see that they're relatively consistent throughout the years. Look at 2018 EBITDA and compare that to the 20 past. It's very similar. But look, even though it's very similar, look, you've lost almost $150,000 worth of revenue because we no longer operate a stump dump and we used to charge those fees and so forth. We no longer look at the cell tower rents, the $92,000 under the 2018. So very different comparison. So he's actually, his expenses are doing pretty good. I mean, his net is pretty good. All right. Rick, we have lakes and parks. We got Rick, and we're on page 10. Okay. For the past budget, we've increased the number of lake rangers. We've stated that we were going to make sure that the lakes are for our members, our property owners. And so one way to accomplish that is to have an increase in lake rangers. But if you increase the number of lake rangers, what do you have to have? You have to have more boats. You have to have more vehicles to get them around so they can check. Okay? So you're going to see all that impacted in here. Boat registrations will go down. So in the 2020 plan, the boat registrations cost less, so the offset is to assessments. Okay, and I'll call that out again. Also, the long-awaited archery range is included in here. Okay, it is a modest archery range, but it's included. Okay, and we're tentatively planning to locate the archery range down from the gun range. By doing that, we have that check-in hut. It has a bathroom, has an employee already there. You can check in there, makes it a lot easier, so it makes sense. In the failed budget, there is no archery range. Okay? We can't do that without the past budget. Challenging thing. With the storms that we had, the dog park, portion of the dog park at Loch Lomond was completely blown out. Not just damaged, but completely blown out. It has to be relocated. There was a string of barrier trees that were along there, and they're all gone. Okay? So in the past budget, we have the relocation of the dog park. In the failed budget, nothing. Not the answer I want to give the community and say, look, we're not going to be able to do it in the failed budget. But that's the reality, and that's how tight our budget is. Fees. Fee changes were included in the 2020 plan. Once again, the 2020 plan is available on our website. No additional adjustments. The fail has no fee changes. You'll notice that even with the fail, we're not adjusting a lot of these fees. The message we do not want to send is that we are going to punish the membership for not approving an assessment increase. That would not be a good message. All right, so here's the projects that are included on the past budget. You have the archery range for $30,000, relocation of a portion of the dog park, and replacing with the aging Lake Ranger trucks. What's not included? Oh, here are the cutbacks. Repaving of the Brittany Dam parking lot. We get a lot of complaints. It's chunked up there. It's in bad condition. It needs to be in the budget, but we had to cut it. We had to cut back on some of the fishing, which is not going to make some of our, those that fish, they're not going to be necessarily happy with that decision, but it was a tough decision that we had to make. We still have $32,000 in fish stocking, but definitely not as much as that we wanted. And here you go. All right, so now look at how I've called out that you'll notice that our income is dropping in this department because you're transferring that revenue from lakes. The boat mooring fees, the boat registration fees, all those things are going to go down. You're going to transfer those over. But if you look from year to year, if you look at 18, trailing 12, and you look at the fail, they're pretty consistent. Okay? Now let's look at the expense side here. So here's the expense side. And you see the expenses are reasonably consistent. Once again, it's going to be tighter on the failed budget, but we're squeezing that as much as you can. And in some cases, you could really argue that we are squeezing too hard. Okay? But that's the reality. We had to do that. All right. Central administration, we used to call this the GM department, but it's a misnomer because it's not just myself. It's also our CFO and so forth. So this is on page 11. And you'll see this department includes myself, CFO, the corporate secretary, and a part-time assistant. So calling it the GM department really didn't make sense, so we changed the name to Central Administration. Easy enough. This includes the sale of ARCMO in the trailing 12. It was a net of $350,000. We talked about that earlier. Normally, each year we include $100,000 as a GM contingency. That's a just in case we have a flood, just in case something breaks. You know, if Tommy comes in, Tommy from F&B comes to me and says, well, the dishwasher just died, and an industrial dishwasher is like 10 grand. Okay, we charge it, but we charge it to the right department, but we end up kind of using the $100,000 as our way to deal with unexpected things. When you have a organization as large as us, remember we have approximately 100 buildings, big and small. As big as this, small as sheds, we have about 100 of them. It costs a lot of money to maintain, but even flooding alone, you'll see that it's impacted quite a bit this year. Unfortunately, we don't have anything in contingency this year. Once again, we're squeezing that budget as tight as possible, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. No major projects. $100,000 contingency was cut out. And I've called out the ARCMO sale because that's a glaring item. But you'll see that the expense items, we're spending quite a bit less than 18 on the total operating expenses. You'll see that we're pretty consistent, down a little bit, but not down too much. Okay. All right, general income. This is kind of Dwayne. Dwayne, raise your hand, please. Dwayne's our CFO. This is general income, and this is on page 12 of your packet. So this department has no employees. This is where assessments go, okay? That's the main thing that goes in here is assessments, okay? Your trailing 12, when you're doing your comparison, if you look at the trailing 12, it's going to have a $1.1 million bump from the sale of the cell tower leases. Also, we put the Trafalgar Fire in this department. Okay, this is where we charge the Trafalgar Fire. So in 18, we had $1.6 million in Trafalgar Fire related expenses. In the trailing 12, we have 3.9. Okay, so those are major shifts in your revenue and expenses that you need to take into account if you're doing a year-to-year comparison. If you don't take that into account, you're going to get bad information. Okay, the failed budget. Now, Dwayne raised his hand earlier today. Give me a fist bump because his department is doing a really good job of doing his best to get as many people to pay as possible on their assessments. And I have a slide later on. We're going to talk about that. But we've increased last couple of years about $200,000 each year. Not only from better collections, but also we have more homes being built. While going from $16 to $24 isn't a huge amount for one home, when you start going 250 homes a year or whatever we're doing lately, then you start picking up some money. The pass budget includes that $200,000 plus the increase in the assessment for the pass. Okay? So it includes both of those. In previous slides, I've always listed the pass reference first and then fail. I did it in reverse on purpose because the pass includes the $200,000 from him doing a great job. Okay. So our insurance company doesn't like us a lot with the Trafalgar Fire. So they gave us a 46% increase. That was fun. $98,000 non-negotiable. We shopped it. We can't do better. We're going to try and see if we can do something about it next year, but we're stuck. $98,000, that's not Dwayne wasn't really thrilled when he had to deliver that message to me, were you? Can't do anything about it. Includes $335,000 in legal fees, okay? On some of our expenses, we can do a very accurate job in estimating exactly how much we're going to spend. For example, Daryl has golf cart leases. He can tell you to the penny how much it's going to cost you each and every month. Legal fees, it's an educated guess. We think we've put enough money in the budget. It is an educated guess, and I would be lying to you if I said anything otherwise. We think we're conservative, but legal fees are very volatile depending upon what happens. Now, keep in mind that there's multiple lawsuits, but the main lawsuit will not go to trial until April of 21. So we do not anticipate as much being spent, although it's hard to say as much when you're talking about $335,000. We anticipate for 21 that number is going to be higher, probably $500,000. Great news. I'm being facetious, of course. No projects. So you'll see how it shifts quite a bit here in that, look at how much the revenue is going up. Let's see if this pointer works right there. Look at that comparison between those two. If you compare those two, you see the impact of the assessment increase. If you compare that one with that one, you can see the $200,000 increase from more homes versus lots and collections efforts. All right. Human resources, we have Doug McCash. Doug McCash is our general counsel, so he gets 2 showings today. He gets the HR side and he gets the legal side. He's been doing that since mid-18, and we're on page 13 of your packet. So, first of all, since we're talking about HR, now the increases, the 1.6% increases, I've already shown it to you every single time we bring up a different department, but we're talking about HR, so I didn't want to miss that. Fail budget includes no increase for our employees. And I mentioned earlier, Doug took over human resources as an additional responsibility in mid-2018. So if you're looking at the 2018 numbers as a comparison, in labor specifically, it's not going to give you a good comparison because we eliminated a director level position. But if you look at the trailing 12, it's going to be similar because it incorporates that change. No capital projects, elimination of a director level position in 2018. So you see, let's take a look at the payroll. Look at what it was in 18, and then it went down, and here it is now. So it went down quite a bit between those two because we eliminated a director level position. We felt that we could get ourselves a little bit more efficient, and we haven't skipped a beat because he's been doing a fantastic job. All right. Marketing and office services, page 14, Kim is right there. Okay, so Kim wanted to make sure that I included the word office services because we do more than just marketing. We also have people that have to go around and drop off, deliver stuff at all our locations, have to pick up bank deposits and so forth. And also we have a printing office because we do a lot of our own in-house printing because it'll save us a lot of money by doing it in-house. Think of all the scorecards that we have and all the other stuff that we have to print, the fee schedules that we have. We do all that in-house. It saves us a lot of money. All right. Excuse me. We will continue to advertise in Ideal Living. We get a lot of relocation leads out of this. They'll go to the trade show in Chicago in January. You're jealous, aren't you? Going up to Chicago in January. That's what Kim's going to be doing. And the state of Arkansas sponsors those booths. All we have to do is fly up there and pay for airfare, meals, and lodging. They cover, and it's like $5,000 per booth. And we take over an entire wall. So if you're coming from Chicago and you're interested in relocating to Arkansas, you can get information about Hot Springs Village, Bella Vista, all the other different places there. So it's pretty neat, and we've had a lot of success with that. Also, I wanted to point out, Inside Magazine is in a lot of our state welcome centers. It's at the Walton Center, also in Bentonville. And I want everybody to be aware that combined between Inside Magazine, Connections, and e-newsletters, all that advertising pays for itself. Okay? And all golf advertising has been doing very well. You can see we were going over the numbers on Wednesday in the golf committee, and you can see 2017 compared to 2018 compared to 2019, you can see a steady increase in the number of non-members playing golf and bringing in money. Tammy, can you talk? It's gone from hot to cold now, and I see a couple people bundled up. Thank you so much. All right, no capital projects. Very tight budget all around. In fact, we had a couple board members that were not pleased with how tight this budget was. And here you go. So you'll see the revenue is pretty consistent, definitely better than 2018, so slowly growing. And you'll see the expenses are pretty consistent. You'll notice how the labor has gone down. We also eliminated a position just a little while ago in that department to get ourselves a little bit more efficient there. All right, legal, back by popular demand. We have Doug. There we go. So in 2018, in income, we had a one-time payment, very large payment, from our largest property owner. One time is the key. On the trailing 12, we have a book loss. So remember earlier this year we had that blowout sale. We sold 350 lots. Well, the good news is those lots coming forward, they're going to, those people they're now paying property taxes that we used to pay on those lots. They're going to be paying assessments, all that stuff. So we got them off our books, but we sold them at a cheap rate because they were all not very desirable lots, very small, hard to build on, so forth. Well, they had a book value that was higher than what we sold it for. Book value, well, that's just what it is. So we had a loss of $140,000, but the key here is we brought in a bunch of cash. $70,000, $80,000 in cash? Right. So that's going to impact your trailing 12. You're going to have a one-time loss of $140,000. Now, what's interesting is in 2016, we had 700 lots that were owned by the POA. We're now down to 38. So we've sold those, and those ones that we've sold are now performing or paying assessments, which is a great thing. All right. In 2020, we plan on having, I'm sorry. What was the last one? Oh, okay. So the past budget includes the contingency funds in the event the POA is sued. Shocker. If the assessment increase is approved, what are the odds that we might get sued? I don't know. We put some money in there just in case. We've done everything we can to make sure we don't, but it could happen. Happened in 2001 when we got the assessment increase. Happened to Hot Springs Village in 2015 when they got their assessment increase. It would be a prudent thing to include it in the budget. We did that. Okay? All right. So in 2020, we had 5 foreclosure sales. So when people are not paying on their assessments, we'll go through, we'll gauge the property. Is it resellable? Is it large enough? Is it connected to the sewer system or close to the sewer system? But in 19, we only had 3 sales. So when we go through and we foreclose on them, we usually foreclose on about 25 lots, correct? 25 lots. And lately, when we've foreclosed on 25 lots, usually between 15 and 20 are purchased by someone. So we're actually not getting those lots back. Where before, years ago, we'd foreclose on 25 lots, we'd get 25 lots back. But when they get acquired by someone, that means they're paying. So let's put this in perspective. So the legal department and collections or accounting do our collections. We split up depending upon the degree of difficulty, if you want to call it that. There are the ease in getting it. If they're relatively current, collections is going to work on it. The harder ones go to legal. Beginning of 16, we had 7,300 lots that were not performing. They were not paying. On top of that, the POA owned 700 lots. So you could say that almost 8,000 lots were not performing or not paying anything into the POA. The current number, 4,300 plus an additional 38 that we own. So we're under 4,400, so we've come a long way in getting more people to pay on their assessments, which is great. That's the good news. The bad news, we still have 4,300 that are not paying, okay? For a community of our size, this is normal, okay? We're actually a lot better. On average, national average is about 20% non-performing, non-paying. The total number of lots the POA has is 39,008. So if you look at 20% of 39,008, we're actually doing pretty good compared. And to give you a comparison, Hot Springs, we compare to Hot Springs a lot. They're similar to us, and then also in some cases dissimilar to us. But they have 7,700 non-performing lots. If you add in the number of lots that they own themselves, they have a total of 11,000 lots that are not paying, and they have a total of 34,000 lots total, where ours is 39. So we're doing pretty good. No capital projects. Cutbacks, we couldn't get too lean because we got some major legal issues on the horizon. So you can't cut back, you know. I'd love to have gone and cut back some of the legal, but that's just not the reality. So here you go. So we referenced earlier about the legal fees. So look under professional services right here, and you'll see we have 60,000, and that compares to 20,000 here and 28,000 here. Now don't forget, while Doug is in charge of the main lawsuit with regards to the Trafalgar fire, we charge that to general income. This is all other legal things, okay? So we separate it. We keep all of our expenses related to the Trafalgar fire in one location so we can easily go, this is how much it's costing us. Whether it's work at the site or legal work, we track it very closely. All right, accounting, backed by popular demand, we have Dwayne. Since 2008, let's see, what page are we on? We are on page 16. Compared to 18, they have reduced one full-time and one part-time person, so they're trying to run as efficiently as possible. You've heard me say that over and over again. Collections efforts are anticipated to remain strong. They've been doing really well. No capital projects. We already referenced the reduction of that staff member. And you can see how, let's look at the bottom line. You can look at the labor there. You can see there's the impact of that reduction of that person. And then you can see the bottom line is quite a bit less. Over time, you usually should see those things go up because of inflation. But in many of our departments, when we're going through here, you're seeing that we're actually spending less because we're trying to be as conservative as possible. Member services, page 17, we have Carmen. There we go. Little change for this department. They're a very efficient department. Always want to remind people that we have the locations at Huntley and Metfield, and also a welcome center at the Country Club. So this department has very little in revenue, but they process $4 million in revenue, okay? So there are unsung heroes because they process everything, but they don't get credit for it. Couple interesting facts. They process 30,000 calls per year, 10,000 photo IDs, 5,000 boat registrations, that includes kayaks, and 4,000 guest cards. So they are busy, busy, busy. And it's going to only get, if the assessment increase passes, they are going to be very, very busy. No capital projects. Already a very lean department. And here you can see that their bottom line expenses have been fairly consistent through the years. They're actually lower. So here you can remember when I referenced earlier that we cut back $1 million out of our budget earlier this year because of the Trafalgar fire. This is a small department. Even this small contribution is well received. She did a great job because she doesn't have a lot to cut back from, okay? You still got to execute the mission. All right, IT, we got Jack. Where's Jack? All right, Jack's in charge of IT, and we're on page 18 of your packet. So computer support contracts are going up. They always do. And most other expenses are remaining constant. We have one main thing coming through, $33,000. This is pass-only budget. It's an upgrade to our accounting system because it is no longer going to be supported after April 14th. So you say, so in the fail budget, you haven't included this $33,000. Isn't that a risk because it will no longer be supported? Uh-huh. It's another one where you're looking at the fail budget and going, have we squeezed too tight? And that's a valid question. Elimination of all staff training, that's never a good thing, but we had to do it. You know, you always want to have those guys stay current on all the certifications because computers change constantly, but we don't have anything in training and no computer upgrades. So you see he's done a good job of maintaining those expenses through the year. And notice how similar those two, pass or fail, his department, it really doesn't matter. He's not impacted that much, where in some other departments it changes quite a bit. Recreation, Joan. There we go. And we're on page 19. And I think this is one of the last departments. Okay, income will decrease as fitness, pools, tennis will be reallocated to assessments. Income has increased since 2018 when we took over the marina. So you're going to see an increase because of the marina in income and expenses, labor and so forth. So just be aware of that. Also, trails maintenance. The POA's commitment, the city has a similar commitment, $35,000 for 19. It goes up to $70,000 in 2020, okay, with the opening of the new trail system. We've received some grants that will help on that. We're optimistic that we'll spend less than the $70,000, but we'd rather budget conservatively and say that we're going to spend 70, and if we spend less than that, that'd be awesome. No fee change, fee changes outlined in the 2020 plan, but the 2020 plan, we didn't include every single fee because then the 2020 plan would have been huge. So we're making a couple changes. The marina pontoon rentals are going to increase by $5 an hour because a lot of people want to use them over the summertime. And Blowing Springs RV rentals are going to go up $2. RV sites, Joan's been doing a fantastic job. That and primitive camping have been doing outstanding. Our revenue has been steadily growing over the years that she's been with us. Pickleball. All right, so between archery and pickleball, those were the two most requested things, and we've included that in the budget. Realistically, it's probably going to be towards the latter portion of the year, not at the beginning. I'm sure the pickleball people would like me to hear them say that we're going to do it immediately, but we're going to have to wait a little bit. Metfield parking lot needs a lot of work. We're going to replace one of our boats that is not renting hardly ever with a ski boat that we feel will, and it includes non-capital expenditures of $60,000. So I referenced earlier that a capital project has to be over $10,000 to be capitalized. Well, you know, treadmills are expensive, but they're not over $10,000. So we have them as non-capital, but they're still a large item. And with the passage, we know that our gyms are going to be used a lot. Okay? All right. Cutbacks. $57,000 in covered docks. So 1 or 2 years ago, we added additional covered slips at Loch Lomond, and our 3-year return on investment is, actually it's a 3-year return on investment. It was really a great decision. We'd love to do it again, and we had to cut it out. We absolutely need to rebuild 2 additional tennis courts that are cracking all over the place, and we wanted to add additional tiny cabins. We added those tiny cabins, that one tiny cabin earlier last year. We are doing fantastic. That has a 2.5 or 3 year return on investment. Another thing that we'd love to do that has proven itself to be very productive, and we had to cut it from the budget. And here, notice how I've called out, here's her income statement, here's your gross income. Notice that this is going down. Notice the allocation, so that money goes to another department. It goes up, assessments go up. And you'll see the expenses. So notice how salaries have gone up a little bit here, but don't forget we took over the marina. So in 18, we did not have the marina. In 19, we do have the marina. And here you have the 1.6% increase, but you also have an impact of the $10 minimum wage change. So that's going to impact that number. And unfortunately, with the $10 minimum wage change, that's non-negotiable. The state said you're doing it, we got to do it. All right, the POA. So we're going to have you go back in your packet a little bit. And on page 2 of your packet, you're going to see a very brief summary. And on page 3 of your packet, you're going to see a lot more detailed P&L. But we're going to go over the simple one. So we've covered all these departments, except for water. Water's going to be last. So what does it all come to? So you'll see your revenue is, even in with the, wrong button. Even with the assessment increase, if you look at those two numbers, it hasn't changed much. Why? Remember, you have the $1.1 million from the sale of the cell towers, and you also have the sale of ArcMo included in that number. So you're like, well, why isn't revenue going up in the past budget compared to the trailing 12? Well, you have two major things that are impacting that. Okay? And then look at the expenses. On the trailing 12, wow, they're doing great on cutting back expenses. Well, you have $4 million in Trafalgar Fire. So you got to take that out. You got to make sure you look at those things. And over here, you have $1.6 million in expenses from the Trafalgar Fire. Now, allocation. So we talked about this as EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and allocations. What are allocations? Okay? So the water department, we're going to go over that last. Charlie, raise your hand, please. So Charlie's in charge of the water department. Charlie is in charge of water. Charlie doesn't have an accounting department. He doesn't have a collections department. He doesn't have a marketing department. He doesn't have a streets repair department when he digs up. He doesn't have any of those. Because why would we have two of them? So we charge him. We allocate expenses. And we do this with the assistance of our auditors because we want to make sure that we're not cheating. Because we could throw a whole bunch of allocations if they didn't audit us. We don't do that. So we have to justify those expenses with our auditors. So we allocate, so we charge Charlie and the water department $1.6 million for doing all those things. Accounting. Now, accounting can't be that expensive. We have 14,000 accounts. Yeah, it is expensive. We got to track them all, okay? And this gives you pre-depreciation, okay? Now, what are we going to subtract? Well, here is your capital projects. We referenced that earlier, $303,000 in capital projects. We referenced earlier, $200,000 is going to go into the emergency reserve. We're going to slowly start building the reserve. I referenced earlier, $200,000 is a lot, is a very modest beginning, but you got to start somewhere. And then we're going to pay off the water loan, $335,000 on the pass, $150,000 on the fail. So you have a positive cash flow of $66,000 and a positive cash flow over here of $32,000. And we talked about the upside potential. Hopefully it'll be more than that. All right, here are all the capital projects where I'm going to have you jump all the way to the end, to page 22. Here's your past capital. All right, and I've split this over 2 pages, but these are all the projects that I referenced earlier. So you remember when I was talking about Lake Point in the back and how we have to repaint that for $15,000? There you go. Okay, so these all, so everything, you've already heard every single one of these already. Here's page two. We talked about the dog park earlier, okay, and we talked about the accounting system that is coming off of support. So a total of $303,500. That compares to a depreciation of $1.6 million. You can see that we are underspending, and we're underspending by a bunch. All right, we're going to go to page 23 now, and here's your fail capital budget. Talk about the last one being thin. This is even thinner. This is, we absolutely must do these projects or things will go really bad. And that's $49,000, really tight. All right, deferred maintenance. So I've referenced this. This is our estimate, $1.8 million in depreciation. We have an expenditure, that number's wrong. I typed that number in incorrectly. It should be 303. I apologize. So the past shortfall is going to be actually more than that. Nothing better than finding error while you're giving the presentation. And there's the $49,000. So you see we're underspending by a large shortfall on the fail budget. All right, we're going to talk about the water utility. It's on page 20. Charlie raised his hand earlier, but here we go again. So we separate the two out. Everything out is POA without water. This is the water department. Water department stands on its own 2 feet. So we've had a lot of new home construction. We did about 250 last year. We'll do about 250 this year. When they come online, they use more water. Also, what's impacting this is in 2020, we're hoping for a lot less rain because his revenue, when you look at the 18 compared to the trailing 12, revenue is way down because nobody's watering their lawn. Okay? Nobody's watering the lawn. Includes debt service for the bond of $520,000. Okay. One fee change. For those who pay online, we are now going to get charged $1.25 per transaction by the processing company. We're going to pass that along. If you pay via ACH or check, you don't get the transaction fee. Set up for ACH, the money comes out, easy as pie. That's what I have, and it doesn't cost me a dime. But if you're going to make an online payment, you're going to get charged $1.25. All right. Pass and fail, we got to do that. So they're going to be redoing the bridge by Town Center West, by the City Hall and so forth. And we have a water line on there that needs to be removed. Okay? Nice little piece of information. Only $375,000 to move a water line. That's unfortunate. We also have to get a $12,000 trench box to make sure our employees are safe, and then a booster pump. The water department will generate positive cash flow after debt service of $1.1 million, in excess of 1.1. All right, so here's the revenue. So let's look at total income. Look at how it dropped 18 compared to the trailing 12. That's rain. All rain. It should have gone up because we had 250 more homes in the trailing 12 compared to the 2018. But we've had so much rain, it's dropped. So we're anticipating we'll have a normal amount of rainfall and we'll have 250 more homes. So that's why that revenue is going up. All right. Now, the water department's doing pretty darn good. Why are we have a pass and a fail budget for the water department? Because we're all one team. At the end of the day, we're all one team. We might separate the books, but we're all on the same team. Okay? So you'll see how labor is staying pretty constant. Now, their one department, our water department has a lot of skilled, not that our other departments don't, but we have a lot of skilled employees in our water department. So the $10 minimum wage really doesn't impact this department, okay? But you'll see that our expenses are pretty similar, going up a little bit here, but even though the water department is not impacted necessarily by the pass or fail budget, we still had him write a conservative budget for the fail. And you could have made the argument that he didn't need to, but it's all one team at the end of the day. All right, so here's the EBITDA. Okay, so here's the total allocations. We told about this. MAC, maintenance and construction, F&E, and here's the total allocations. F&E, you got accounting, you got all that collections, you got all that stuff in there. So here's your pre-depreciation gross. Now we're going to subtract. We have some capital projects for this department. I'm going to cover the capital projects. Oh, I actually did, I'm sorry, in here. And then we have debt service. We're paying off a portion of the water bond. And then we're repaying. So the POA has been borrowing money from the water department, and we're going to repay. And here's that $335,000, and then the $150,000 on the failed budget. So you can see that both of those are doing pretty darn good. Okay? Now, you'll notice, well, why did that simple cash flow is different than there? Well, we didn't include capital projects or debt service here. We're just trying to give you a good comparison. All right, and here are the capital projects that I referenced earlier, $402,000. Oh, let me back up. What was not included in here is we've been doing on an annual basis about $300,000 in water line replacement because our system's getting older and older, and we elected to not do that this year, okay? I failed to include a cutback slide on this department. Is that accurate, Charlie? All right. So we started it at the very beginning. We talked about that the board is tentatively planning on approving the budget on the 21st. We'll know the outcome of the assessment increase at that time. So we'll know whether we're going to go with the pass or the fail. So, you know, I want to compliment the team in doing a great job because in most years it's hard enough to write one budget, let alone writing two budgets, and you have to put your pass hat on and think about things if passes, and then you have to put on a fail hat and think, okay, how things are going to be different if it fails. All right, I mentioned earlier this entire presentation is available on the POA's website in the financial section. So if you want to relive this wonderful experience, you can go through it. And Q&As, if we can limit it to 3 minutes, I'm going to make sure that the microphone is on. Can you grab that for me there, buddy? There we go. All right, questions? Now, what was interesting, I'm going to, Tommy, before you jump in, I was looking at, and I keep on comparing myself to Hot Springs, but their presentation was about 10 pages long. Ours was 130. We wanted to provide you with as much information as possible, be as transparent as possible. We have given you a lot of information, and we feel it's useful information. So, Tommy, fire away.
Tommy Freitag. Is it on?
Yeah, I can hear it.
25 Pomona Drive. Just a couple of quick ones.
If you could do it one at a time, the memory's not as good as it used to be.
The 1.6.
It's not
the
on?
$1.6 million that we had.
No, oh, hold on. Chris is going to. Do you have keys that you could twist this thing so it doesn't fall out?
Okay. The $1.6 million that you alluded to for 2018 from the fire that
yes.
you called, what was that $1.6 million?
So,
I don't remember hearing
Dwayne, you might be better at explaining this, but so what they said was, since the fire started in 18, a portion of the expense had to be allocated to 18. If you go on to our audited financial statements, into the notes section, it gives a really detailed explanation as to why they allocated $1.6 million, even though the money was technically not, it was expended in 19, but they felt that we had to incur part of that expense since the fire was ignited in 18, it had to go there. There was lengthy conversations about that, and I personally didn't 100% agree with it, but when the auditors say you're going to do this, you got to do it.
Was the 1.6 part of the $4 million that we paid to put it out then?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So if you look back, I'm going to fly backwards on all these slides, way to the very beginning. So there's 130 slides, so it's going to take me a little bit. But you'll see how I've notated that the 1.6 is in 18 and the 3.9 is in the trailing 12, because the 1.6 was in December of 18, which is included in the trailing 12. Does that make sense?
The 3.9 was in the trailing,
The 3.9 is in
included the 1.6.
included the 1.6, yes.
All right. Good.
And
One other question then. In your presentation, as far as paying the water department back on the 2.88 that we owe right now today as I speak,
Correct.
we're going to pay that down by the end of the year to 2.3.
correct.
And then if the plan passes, we're going to pay that back over 7 years at $335,000 a year.
Correct.
Right. If it fails, we're going to still pay the 2.3 million that we're going to owe at the end of this year back at $150,000 a year for 10 years, which only comes out to $1.5 million. Where's the other 800,000 going to come from?
Well, the slide says over 10 years, and
It does.
I can't necessarily say, are we going to do 150 exactly? So in the past budget, we've committed that we're going to pay back at least $335,000, okay? In the fail, there is no commitment. So if we can do more than 150, then we will do, but there is no commitment in the fail. So
I was just going by your slide, and your slide said over 10 years,
yeah,
150.
and it could be, unfortunately, quite a number of years over 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. And I didn't even find where the slide was. Next.
I'm a little shorter. My name is Alita Whitney, and my question's regarding
Could you speak up a little bit?
What?
Yeah. Here we go.
Now?
Yeah, you got almost.
Wait, I don't have it in there right.
There we go. I did. Here we go. You got to be right next to it.
Okay. My name is Alita Whitney, and it's regarding the food and beverage budget.
There you go.
And what I'm questioning and wondering about is on your expenses for utilities, that in the 2020 budget pass or fail, it increases by 30,000, your utilities. See? Went 29,000 and then you go to 62,000.
Tommy, help me out.
See utilities?
No, I see it, and I'm working through in my head why it would go up.
Yes, we adjusted to do what we do with top of mic and kind of mirror that.
Can you give me a little more than that?
A lot of it is cable TV, and we picked up cable TV at Lake Point. A lot of it is picking up extra propane. We're going to see an increase in electricity. It's several different things that equal that 30,000. It's no one big item. So you're looking at propane, utilities, phone, all kinds of things that fall in. How many items is that, Jack, in utilities? About 9? It's 9 items, and we've seen an increase in almost all of them. If you'll email me or give me a call, I can give you more breakdown, but right off the top of my head, I can't do all of it. Yes, ma'am. We just wanted to adjust to be consistent with everything else that is going on within the POA and how the electricity is allocated to the different departments.
Hi, Susan Nuttall, 40 Pimlico. I have a question really about the contingency or lack thereof in combination with what we know is a pretty good sized bill to get the bridges fixed at the Scottsdale Golf Course. So we know that there's going to be some cost there, right? We know there's no contingency. So what's the plan?
Well, the plan is we have to, so I'm going to omissions, which is what you're talking about, is I don't have an easy answer for you. For right now, we're meeting with the engineers. Keith met with them today and got some good news, but we're going to need to know how much it's going to cost to repair it, how long it's going to cost, because it all depends upon the permitting. Depending upon the permit that we get, it could be 6 months before we can do anything. And are there workarounds? Can we can we use the bridge in the meantime before the work has to be done? So those are all big variables. And the board, when we met, we actually actively discussed talking about, I'm pointing at a board member that made the argument, we actively discussed, do we include a placeholder in here? But I would hate to throw a placeholder in there because unfortunately people are going to say, look, Tom, you told us it was going to cost this much. And I'd say, well, no, that was a placeholder and I was guessing. Okay, so we decided to not put a guess in there because it's such a wide variance in the amount of dollars. So that's why I put it as an omission, because I know it's a glaring omission, but that's the reality. That we don't have all the answers, and unfortunately, the budget cycle is not always perfect where you know everything at the time that you're writing the budget. This just happens to be a large item that we don't know.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing is if we have a flood next year, again, where does that money go? Where does that money come from since it's not even in your contingency?
So that question isn't necessarily bridge related. We've had multiple floods over the last couple of years, and we've had years where it has impacted us several $100,000. You're correct that by not including contingencies, we don't have a contingency in there for flooding. We don't have a GM in contingency, which is kind of a global contingency. And you can make a really good argument that we are squeezing too tight, but we're also trying to accomplish a lot of different things all at one time. So I would say that I agree with your concerns wholeheartedly. To go into based upon how it's been going, it's every other year we get hit with a major flood. That's often. Yes?
Hello, Sandy Fosdick. I caught the fact that our liability and casualty insurance is going up 46%, and I assume that's reflected under the legal department's insurance?
It goes into
Okay, I'll
general
look for
income.
that. My question is, are we now self-insuring all of our property? Why
No, we're not.
in every department does the insurance expense significantly decrease? So I'd like to pick on Mike Taggart since he's not here.
Absolutely.
It's showing for 2018, 104,000. And then under the pass, there must be something here I'm missing. Under the insurance expense, see the 104?
Mm-hmm.
And then under the pass and the fail, it's showing 14,154 and 12,317. And if you look at every department, it's almost the same. It's a huge decrease. It looks like clubhouses went from 57,000 to 0.
Give it a second. Give it a second.
There
you go.
Yeah, in 2019, we moved all of the insurance general to the general income except water, and so that's why the difference in the years. And also, what the insurance that you're still seeing remaining in the other departments is workers' comp liability. It's workers' comp insurance.
Okay, so when we take that in consideration as far as how each department is operating, we need to look at the huge decrease in that expense, correct?
Yeah, you'll look at the increase, it's in general income, and it's also in water, is where the big increases are.
And just so that I thoroughly understand, why did we do that?
We did it for simplicity. It's easier to put it in one department, the insurance cost, to see what it really is, rather than spread it across, and water's always separate.
Okay.
Anybody else? Sure.
I forgot to ask this one. What kind of interest rate are we paying the water department for that loan?
Wall Street Prime.
Pardon?
Wall Street Prime.
Which is 3.2?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
5.5?
0.5%.
Where will that interest show up on their statement?
General income, correct?
The interest expense is in general income as far as,
On the water department?
it'll be in other income on their income as far as the interest that POA is paying the water department.
On the water department expense sheet?
On the water department, it will be.
So there'll be a line there,
It's-
interest?
Yeah, it'll be income, yes.
Trying to get to it, Tommy, but there's too many slides to get there fast, unfortunately. Is it income or contract expense?
It's other income, and it'll be separated in 2020 as far as the new financials, because when we did the board.
So it's
we-
right there?
Yeah, right under, before you get the total income. It's another.
There you go.
It's 112 and 96 or something like that.
Hi, Mary Shalacy, Duding Place. On your budget, you have a double expense for membership elections
On my budget.
on the
in
GM,
in the-
general admin. So are you planning on asking for another increase in election?
Well, when we wrote the budget, we didn't know that we were going to be at quorum.
So that's a yes?
We
You have it under
included,
the fail.
we included the assumption that we would go for an assessment increase because at the time that we wrote the budget, we were not at quorum. We're at quorum now, but at the time that we wrote it, we weren't at quorum.
Okay, and on Mr. Cash's in legal, what do you have for professional services?
So I referenced earlier, like in the past, you'll see it's a little bit higher because we are anticipating that, so professional services would be, so Doug is an outstanding attorney, but he's a generalist, if you want to call him that. And there are times that we have to get specific legal assistance for a specialist, a real estate specialist and so forth. And so we've included in there, in the past budget, that we're thinking there's a possibility, we don't know how much, that if the assessment increase is passed, we could get sued. It happened in 2001, we were sued, and it happened to Hot Springs Village in 2015. They were sued when they got an assessment increase.
We have
So-
47 in the fail, so that's why I'm questioning it.
Yeah, we unfortunately have to use lawyers often.
Okay, and in marketing and office services, you have outside contracts of $142,008. Can you tell me what those are?
Microphone?
Those include the printing and writing and contractors that we use to write articles for Connections, Inside Bella Vista, and any newsletters.
Anything else? You guys have been awesome. I really appreciate your attention. You have a wonderful evening. Drive home safe. And don't forget, all this information is available on our website. Have a great evening.